All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the premiere of the SB Nation podcast. People will be talking about this moment in media classrooms for years to come. My name is Dan Rubenstein, and I'm being distracted by our production booth. But alongside me to my left is Josh Dodd. Josh, you are making your media debut today.
Essentially my media debut, yes.
Behind a microphone.
Yes.
I host and do weird stuff for SB Nation, as this is the SB Nation podcast. And you are a producer at SB Nation, and you produce all sorts of fun things. Like
things, weird things.
Full Nelson.
Yes.
And other things.
And other random things.
Josh, I don't know. You're very talented, and I'm glad to have you here. If you're wondering about Josh's bio and what qualifies him to be behind a microphone, he attended Indiana University, and before that, you were the sports editor at Central Grove?
Center Grove.
Center Grove
High School.
Center Grove High School. Okay.
Yeah, they'd be very proud.
I'm glad we got that out of the way.
Yeah.
How are you doing?
I'm doing well. How are you doing?
I'm all right.
Yeah.
It seemed a little bit formal for us to do, but...
that was formal, considering that I've known you for years.
That's
now.
true.
You're the only non-LA transplant.
Is that
You're
true?
the only person from LA that I actually know.
Wow. I'm
not from LA, but actually,
I'm impressed. That was weird. We're gonna talk about the NFL draft today because it is happening shortly.
Very shortly.
Yes, and we're gonna have Brad Wells here via the telephone because that's what happens. And we're gonna talk NFL draft. We're gonna talk players. We're gonna talk teams, team needs, all sorts of fun things like that. He's very smart. He's smarter than both of us put together.
He is.
But before that, NFL schedules came out this week. Do you have strong opinions about this?
I don't have strong opinions. I'm a Colts fan. There's no shame in saying that. I don't hide that. I'm very proud to see, Peyton Manning in prime time 5 more times this year, as he usually would be. The sad thing was we had a handful of primetime games as a Colts fan last year. Steelers and the Bucks, and had a lot of things scheduled that just didn't pan out.
Right.
I also think, looking at the schedule, and a lot of people, might doubt this and do doubt this, but we have a very good chance to start off the year. I'm going to go ahead and say 7-2. It's very ambitious.
Really?
We have the Vikings, the Jaguars very early.
The Indianapolis Colts of Indiana?
The Indianapolis Colts of Indiana. But then a friend I was just talking to earlier, he reminded me that we did gut our entire team.
Right.
So unless we're playing a D2 schedule or against Center Grove High School, I don't think we're going to make it.
So nothing else other than
some big, I like week 1, Giants
Right.
Cowboys. Yeah, someone made mention of what week is it? It's a Redskins-Panthers matchup.
Right.
That was a highly ranked matchup only because of Cam Newton and Robert Griffin III.
Yep.
I don't really care about that matchup too much.
Really?
Yeah.
I kind of do.
Do you?
Because I don't have a team. So
That's true.
I want to see Robert Griffin.
That's true.
I like Cam Newton on a weird level, even though he beat the Oregon Ducks in the national championship game a couple of years ago. It's basically for NFL stuff with me. It's all what is the random matchup? What is the random storyline?
Right.
Because I don't really have. I like the 49ers, but I don't really have a team.
It's tough to predict, this early.
It's tough to predict.
Off season.
Yeah, that is true. But yeah, there's random stuff throughout the season. There's a bunch of Wednesday, or I guess Wednesday's the opening night, but there's a bunch of Thursday night games this season.
Wednesday's the opening night now.
Right. I believe so.
I did not know that.
I have no idea. I remember opening night last season. I think it was probably a Thursday because it was a
doubleheader
college
on
game.
Thursday.
I think Arizona, Oklahoma State was going on at the same time. I was at a sports bar. That's weird that I remember that. Anyway, yeah, the NFL schedule is out, and we can all look at it and have all sorts of fun, but it doesn't really matter at this point because we don't even know what teams are going to look like because there's a draft coming up.
There is.
And people will be adding important people to those teams that they love so much. The other thing that sort of strikes me about football right now, spring practice in college. You attended the Indiana University.
Yes.
Are you an Indiana fan?
Absolutely.
So you're
More
not
of a
like
basketball fan.
you're from Indiana. So
Indiana.
it wasn't like, did you grow up an Indiana football fan, or were you like a Notre Dame?
You know what?
sellout?
I grew up a Notre Dame football fan.
Okay.
I
But once
don't
you
hide that.
attended IU.
Once I attended IU, I was a football
switched over.
fan. The way we do it is we tailgate.
Right.
They would usually, a cannon would go off every time we score, so we would, nobody would go into
So
the game.
they never played.
So
they
you
never
would hear
shot
this
the
cannon very rarely, usually
Right.
for a field goal.
Right.
And then you would turn up the radio and
Sure.
it'd be an Ohio State lead 63-7, and that would be like it.
Right.
Got our asses kicked up and down the Big Ten, and even schools like Central Michigan.
What's the absolute highlight of your Indiana fandom? Is it like Antoine Randall?
Antoine Randall.
Yeah, I imagine.
Yeah.
And that's
He, my freshman year, he wasn't there. So just before I got there,
Right.
he had left, but he left a strong impact.
you almost had Gunnar Kiel.
Oh, we did for a few days.
For a few days,
For a
you
few
had,
days, we had Gunnar
like
Kiel.
the top ranked quarterback
Yeah.
in the high school class.
From Indiana, born and bred.
Yep.
Born and
Brother
raised.
went to Indiana.
Yeah,
and
he was
also-
ready to go.
And he left
Yep.
for LSU, and now he's on Notre Dame. Allegedly.
Yeah, I don't like that. I don't like that. It's a
So
lot of
you're
wishy-washy.
sour on Notre Dame.
No, I'll always be a
sour
Notre
on
Dame fan.
him leaving.
Yeah, I don't have. I'm not. I don't
So
hold
you're
him
an
close to
IU
my
and
heart.
Notre Dame fan.
I was always a Notre Dame football fan, IU basketball fan. And Notre Dame friends hate me for that. And
Right,
As
yeah.
they should.
Right.
Because they paid good money to get
That's
into
all.
that
That's
school.
like being UCLA basketball, USC football.
Yeah.
That's
Does that
awful.
exist?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Ugh.
I remember Jessica Alba said something about that.
Really?
Yeah.
So I'm no
I
better
have
than
never.
Jessica Alba.
I'm never gonna date Jessica Alba just because.
No.
Just for that
I
reason.
would just write her off.
I scratch my nose a lot. I don't know why.
Do you?
I'm told I have blackheads. Do you deal with your blackheads? How am I doing?
I think you're doing all right.
I feel like I'm doing okay.
I don't really get too deep into the skin of
All right.
Dan Rubenstein.
Well, you will. It's very early on in the SB Nation podcast.
This extra seat.
I should
can
sell
scoot
this
over.
mug for sponsors. We got to make some money. Make that shrill. Is it shrill? Is that what it's
Skrill.
called?
I
The
think it's
Skrilla?
Skrilla.
Let's see.
You were the one playing NWA before we.
I was
jumped
playing
into
NWA,
this,
and it
so.
felt really good. The
Yeah.
other thing, and I mean, there's spring practice in Oregon. Has a good spring. I'm an Oregon fan, obviously.
Yes.
Obviously.
Do they do like a green and gold game or whatever you?
They do. They
green and
honor
yellow?
the military.
Okay.
They wear like these military type uniforms.
That's cool.
And instead of saying Oregon on the jersey, it says like support the troops.
Oh. Very novel deal. And then
You
they
just
all
don't
go
care
back.
at all.
Then they all go back and get high.
You're
after that,
pretending.
right?
Yeah, no, they do get very high.
Yeah. I read that everybody
drink
in
the
college
drugs.
athletics smokes weed.
Yeah. It's a shocker.
They drink the drugs.
The other thing, because spring practice is kind of boring, the only thing that really matters with spring practice is if there's like a new coach, like, oh, how's it going with like Mike Leach or
Yeah.
Rich Rodriguez? Or, people get hurt. People get their
Do they?
ass handed to them. Yeah.
So they don't go light. They, because again,
depends on
Indiana, we
school.
didn't, the cream and crimson game wasn't always a big deal.
Is that what it's called?
Yeah, maybe.
Cream and Crimson.
Yeah.
Maybe.
I just wait for basketball season.
It's alleged that it's called the Cream and Crimson game. Yeah, and some people get hurt. I think USC didn't even tackle in
Really?
their spring game.
That's a lot of fun.
Because they're down scholarships. It's so fun
'Cause they're
to,
down
to go to go to a game to watch people wrap up and then have a whistle
Yeah.
blown and then they just slide down.
Right.
Yeah, so that, I mean, it's injuries and coaches. I think is the only thing that really matters about spring. The last thing we're going to get into before the draft quickly.
Yes.
Maria Sharapova. I'm a big tennis fan. I don't know if you're a big tennis fan.
I am.
I know very little about you.
But you know a lot more than,
He doesn't actually
I
work
would
here.
like you to know.
Right.
Yeah, I don't even work here.
But Maria Sharapova, she's like 6'2".
Mm-hmm.
That's
Gorgeous.
Like, that's extraordinarily tall though.
It is. It is.
Could you be with a woman that's 6'2"?
6'2" is tall, but Maria Sharapova, I
Are
think
you
I can handle that.
6'1"? How tall are you?
About 6'1".
About 6'1".
She'd be taller than me.
And I mean, you got to go out. She's got to wear heels.
Right.
You're talking about 6'4", 6'5". I mean,
Right.
that's
That's big.
a lot of woman.
I mean, I'm not a fan. I'm not a Brittany Griner guy. Like,
Right.
That's not really my type, but,
I am not myself, but somebody
Maria
is.
Sharapova, I would make an exception.
There's somebody for
is.
everybody.
There's somebody
Here's
for
the question
everybody.
though. Now she has cut her hair.
You know what? I saw. Okay, we were talking about this.
Yeah, I'm looking at it right now.
In this photo, she looks fantastic with short hair, long hair. But then I don't know if you noticed this. This is from Business Insider.
Right.
I think they were both looking at.
Right.
There's an update at the top of the page.
Okay.
Do you see that? Have you refreshed
It's
your
a
page
lie.
recently?
She did not get a
Yeah.
haircut.
So I don't want to,
Was it just a
in the
fake?
interest of transparency, and then she has, this long hair in the next.
What was it?
photo.
A wig?
I have no idea.
What's the situation?
I
We didn't
have
do
no
any
idea.
research.
We started to.
We looked at a picture and just
Yeah.
assumed it was
We just
real.
assumed. Well, because it's. How can you sell that? You
Still
got. A hair, I
looks
noticed
good.
you got a haircut the other day.
I did get a haircut.
You can't fake that.
I'm terrified of haircuts.
Are
I
you?
finally found somebody
Did
in
you?
LA after. No, I'm talking about in LA.
Oh.
Before I moved, maybe 8 months. Yeah, 8 months ago, something like
Okay.
that I trusted, that did a good job. Then I moved. And I went to, there's a haircut place right by me. A haircuttery.
A
if you will.
haircuttery?
Yeah, a
An
barber
old
shop.
timey haircuttery in Brooklyn.
It got, yeah, that's what it's called. Ye old time haircuttery.
What part of Brooklyn are you
It's Brooklyn Heights.
in? Oh,
So it was right around there, and it got good reviews on Yelp. It was Russian guys that were operating it. I'm okay with
can't
Russian
beat it.
guys.
Yeah, I can't beat it.
I think I'm Russian myself, and it was a so haircut. This was about like 6 weeks ago.
Okay.
They left a lot in the back, so it looked like I had like a speed skating, like dorsal fin, constantly. But here's the good thing: I went and got a new haircut last week. I think they did okay.
They did a great job.
It doesn't matter what it looks like now; it matters what it looks like in a couple
Right.
weeks. So,
Plus, no one's supposed to see this. It's all supposed to be on.
are you happy with your
Right.
haircutting situation?
I'm up and down on it. Sometimes
Yeah?
I had a place. I just recently moved.
Ooh.
So now I'm in that.
So you're in the market.
I'm in limbo. I'm in the market for a cheaper but
What's
efficient.
how much are you willing to pay for a haircut?
It got a little. When I grew up, it was a Great Clips haircut for
Right.
$9 as
Sure.
a kid, and then you come to the city, you start paying $30 for a haircut.
It's $30.
Yeah, but some people scoff at that, and I'd like to get down on like a nice $10, $15
This is a
haircut.
$20 haircut.
Yeah, good. That's reasonable.
I feel like that's okay.
In the city, everything's kind of,
Right. I was paying 20 in LA, so I figure it's consistent.
You're good.
So
You're
that
good to
works. All right. We've talked about our hair. I have talked about my
I don't know how that happened.
We've
thought we were
talked
just
about
going to talk
Indiana
about Maria
football.
Sharapova.
If there's anybody still watching or listening, it's probably to talk about and listen to people talk about the NFL draft.
Mm-hmm.
So, with that said, let's bring in Brad Wells, who of course runs Stampede Blue for the wonderful SB Nation blog, Stampede Blue. He's been in the studio many times, and now he's not in the studio because he has been dealing with his spouse, who has been sick. First, before we start talking about the NFL draft, how is your spouse?
He's very well. Thank you very much for asking.
Of course. And thank you very much for coming here or via phone to talk about the NFL draft. Are you ready to roll?
I am always ready to roll. Thank you very much for having me.
Good. You are in the studio audibly with myself and Josh Dodd, the new face of SB Nation.
Mr. Josh, it's nice to see a new face.
Yes. Okay. So let's start out with the sort of obvious thing. You are a Colts blogger, fan, know-it-all maestro. Are you perfectly at peace with Andrew Luck?
Oh yeah. I'm definitely at peace with Andrew Luck. You and I have talked about Andrew Luck a lot, off camera and sort of chit-chatting about it. And I actually think between, let's say, him and Robert Griffin III, I think that he fits better in Indianapolis, especially since the organization is transitioning away from Peyton Manning. If there's a player that's the closest thing to Peyton Manning, it's Robert Griffin. It's Andrew Luck. He's as close to Manning as you're going to get in terms of a prospect quarterback.
Brad, do you think that Andrew Luck does have the same kind of cerebral quarterback mentality, or is he just a big body with a big arm?
I do, actually. I think that it's difficult to compare him to Peyton Manning now. What I've seen of Andrew, and again, Dan knows more about Andrew than I do. I've watched maybe 6 games of Andrew's, 2 from his junior year and 3 from his senior year. And I actually think that Andrew is farther along coming in as a rookie than Peyton was. I think Andrew coming into the league now, he's about at the level was Peyton was in his second year, at least from a cerebral standpoint. His ability to command an offense and get the ball to open players and to exploit mismatches is pretty unparalleled.
Do you think the playbook will be as expansive as it will be for, or I guess as it is for current NFL quarterbacks, given how much control he had over the offense at Stanford and, calling the plays, the line? Do you think it's going to be a relatively limited situation in Indianapolis to start out with?
I would imagine that it would be pretty expansive, maybe not as expansive as it was, let's say, under Peyton Manning. And they're going to be running pretty much the same offense that they ran for 14 years under Manning with Luck. So I imagine that it will be, yes.
Okay, and moving on, just because the quarterback position does seem to be one that a lot of people like to talk about. Robert Griffin III, all signs point to him, being the new quarterback for the Washington Redskins. How do you project him going forward? Because there seems to be a drop-off, of course, after RG3, at least it seems. But in that offense with Mike Shanahan and Kyle Shanahan, do you expect him to be limited, or do you expect to see him in more of a Baylor-type role?
I think they're going to protect him in terms of not protect him in terms of necessarily offensive linemen, but one of the things that Griffin seems to excel in is getting outside of the pocket, and delivering the football very fluidly, and that's essentially what the Shanahan offense is. And Griffin, I think, in his first year, you're going to need to find ways to sort of help him get acclimated to the pro game, because the type of offense they ran at Baylor was, as they say, it was a college offense. He's running a lot of options, and basically, if he can roll out of the pocket and work with half the field and get the ball to open receivers, he will be more than fine next year as a rookie.
And beyond him, of course, the name that's now in the top 10, or I guess has been in the top 10 for a little while, Ryan Tannehill. I am on record as saying Ryan Tannehill was a decent college football quarterback, and never struck me as somebody you would want to build an NFL franchise around, which is what I guess we're all assuming if a quarterback is taken in the first round now, at this point, that he is the quarterback of the future. How does he strike you? Because when you look at his numbers in college, he was, again, good, not great. He has a full season under him as a starter, and was decent. He was good. His team went 6-6. What are the Miami Dolphins, which seem to be the team that is thrown around with his name? What do the Miami Dolphins see in him, or is it a situation of they need a quarterback and they are going to grab the next one available?
I'm going to ask you a trivia question as a way to answer your question. Okay. Are you ready?
Yes,
ready?
That's a cop-out, by the way, but yes.
It's a total cop-out, but you're going to like it because it's going to agree with a lot of your assessments.
I love it. Okay.
Yeah, I know. You love it. Who is the current offensive coordinator of the Miami Dolphins?
Mike Sherman.
And who was Mike Sherman last year?
Oh, who wasn't Mike Sherman last year? Mike Sherman was he was the head coach of Texas A&M. So yes, no, I get that. And is that the primary reason?
I think that it's just tailor-made for him to go to the Miami Dolphins. I think it's just set up that way. The Dolphins, from everything that I've heard, are very, very interested in Tannehill. They were very interested in his pro day. The Seattle Seahawks are very interested in him too, but they don't think he's going to fall to them in the first round.
So would you take him with a top 10 pick?
Definitely be a Dolphin.
Would you take him? Do you value him as a top 10 quarterback?
From a talent point of view, and I think that's where a lot of people fall in love with these top 10 guys. From a talent point of view, yes, he's got a cannon of an arm. He can get the football down the field. For a guy that big, he can move and run. He ran a pro-style offense at Texas A&M. He had command of that offense. He's a former wide receiver, so he puts the ball in places that don't get his wide receivers killed the way some other quarterbacks do. So there's a lot of good things. He's a smart guy, hard worker. He's not like a Ryan Leaf type who's showing up to meetings hungover and drunk and stuff like that. So there's a lot of positives. The negatives with him, and their big red flags, is not a lot of experience starting. And in big game situations, he kind of folded a little bit, as you seem to insinuate.
Right.
So I think that there's a lot of positives there. I would take him, in my opinion, in the top 15 because this is a quarterback-driven league. But all of the negatives are completely credible, and Tannehill is a big X factor.
And when you look at the first round in general, and I don't know how in depth we'll go with positions, but when you look at the first round in general, I know I want to say it was last season where there was just a huge run on defensive linemen in the first round. Is there a particular position that you feel like this draft is heavy in that is particularly, I don't know, advantageous to the teams that will be picking in the first round?
In the first, wide receiver, I think. I think this is a very deep wide receiver draft. There's a lot of really quality offensive linemen in the draft, too, not just tackles, which everyone seems to value very highly, left tackles, but just defensive linemen in general, DeCastro being one. And, the wide receiver position, you're going to have teams in the second round who are going to get some high-quality wide receivers. Jeffrey from South Carolina is probably going to fall in the second round. I like the kid out of Rutgers. I've kind of fallen in love with him recently. Mohammed, I think it's pronounced Sanu.
Sanu, yeah.
Yeah, I've watched some tape on him recently and been very impressed with him. I would not be surprised if the Indianapolis Colts take him with the 34th pick, team him up with Andrew Luck.
Yeah, I saw earlier Jeffrey possibly going to the Colts as well, which, Dan turned me on to him earlier in this off season, he's such a body.
Really, really great player. Got some Randall from LSU. He's probably going to be there in the second round. I mean, people were talking about Kendall Wright being a top 15 pick, and he's fallen seemingly out of the first round. I mean, this is a very, very deep wide receiver draft, and I know a lot. The one thing I'll say about the top 5, because it was kind of what you were insinuating a little bit, is a lot of people keep talking about Justin Blackmon being in the top 5, and I personally just don't see it. I think the kid's got great playmaking ability.
Right.
But receivers are valued on how fast they are, and he's just not that fast.
I'm going to ask you about another player that is universally considered to be a top 5 player. We actually did a video about this yesterday, Josh and I and Matt Ufford, the esteemed Matt Ufford. Trent Richardson is undoubtedly physically a superior running back, and possibly even over the last few drafts when you look at running backs that have come out. I don't know who he compares to specifically. I guess he's built maybe a little bit like Jonathan Stewart from a few years ago out of the University of Oregon. But at this point, with what we know about how NFL teams work, it's a pass-heavy league. We know that as talented as you can be physically, and I guess Adrian Peterson is a prime example, is the value there for taking a running back that high when, as we look at the best running backs in the NFL, a lot of them are taken later on? Is it worth taking a running back that high?
I personally don't believe so.
Okay.
It's as you say, it's a pass-happy league now, and nothing against Trent Richardson. He is a phenomenal talent, and I think 10 years ago, there's no question. I think he'd probably be number 2 or number 3 taken in the draft.
Right.
Maybe even over Robert Griffin III. this league now, I mean, look at the two teams who were in the Super Bowl. Look
Yep.
at who their running backs were.
Indeed.
I mean, Adrian Peterson is a great back, but he didn't start to become really relevant in terms of winning games until Brett Favre showed up there. So that's just kind of how the league is now, unfortunately, for running backs.
So, and the three teams that have been mentioned with Trent Richardson, it seems, have been Cleveland, Tampa, and St. Louis. What is the best direction that each of those teams can go in to become better immediately?
Immediately, with Tampa, I think Trent Richardson is a good option there. I don't necessarily know if they feel comfortable with Blunt. He had some fumble problems last year. St. Louis could go with him as well because Steven Jackson's kind of getting up there in years. He's going to be 29 or not 29 already.
How dare you insinuate that that's old, by the way?
How sad is that?
I know. Me being 35,
right.
Probably shouldn't say anything.
We need
about
to put
that,
you out to pasture.
Yeah, I'm already. Well, if you talk to my spouse, I'm already out to pasture. Anyway, but for a running back, 29 years old is old. Guys just get beat up really too quickly. Look at LaDainian Tomlinson. I think he's only 32, and I don't think he's even signed with the team right now. So I think those two teams going with Richardson make a lot of sense. And I think with Cleveland, the issue that I have with Cleveland, and I have debates regarding this with Browns fans because Browns fans seem to feel differently about this for justifiable reasons. But Cleveland hasn't had a quarterback in, Bernie Kosar, maybe? The last quarterback that they had that was really top level that got them to one playoff games, we're talking Vinny Testaverde. You need a quarterback in this league to win.
Yep.
And, I said before I got on that I promised that I wouldn't overvalue Ryan Tannehill. But if you're Cleveland, you're either doing one of two things with Tannehill this year. You're either taking him thinking that you think at number 4,
right,
because you think he's going to be your franchise quarterback, or you're essentially telling your fan base, this year's kind of a waste. We're hoping to get Matt Barkley or Landry Jones next year because you need a quarterback in this league to win.
Is there anything wrong with doing that? I would be devastated, and you and I both suffered through a cold season where we had to watch that happen, but we knew it was going to happen. But is there anything wrong with basically telling your fans, I know the Browns have been through hell and back, not even back, they've just been through hell.
Yeah.
But is there something wrong with saying, hey, just deal with it, give us a year, and we'll get this all figured out?
I think in terms of logic and being practical, I think it's perfectly fine. Hey, there's no real quarterbacks in this draft for us to take. There's no free agents. We had no shot at Peyton Manning, so, we're just going to stick with Colt McCoy this year, and that's it. However, if you tell season ticket holders, who are shelling out thousands of dollars and being told, oh, by the way, you got to pay for 4 preseason games as well, that, and this season's pretty much a waste, that's going to make them mad. And that's really the way the teams work right now. They just don't want to upset their season ticket holders, and you have to at least put up the front that you're trying to win or get to the playoffs every year.
When you look at the list and you look at mock drafts of, who's available, who's being sort of shuttled to each team, is there a team that strikes you as a final piece team either to make the playoffs or to make a deep run in the playoffs? And I don't know if he was a final piece last year, but somebody like Aldon Smith with the 49ers who was just able to come in on third downs and wreak absolute havoc and take them from a non-playoff team to one of the most dangerous defensive teams we've seen in recent years. Is there a piece with a team that you could see that happening in 2012 with?
We'll go back to the guy that you mentioned before with Trent Richardson. I think that where he lands, he could be a big piece to help push somebody over the top. Maybe a team like Tampa Bay. 2 years ago, Tampa Bay was 10-6.
Yep.
And last year, the wheels just seemed to come off. They've invested a lot of money in free agents. They got Vincent Jackson, spent a lot of money for him. They seem to have a lot of faith in Josh Freeman. You add Trent Richardson to that mix, that could be potentially very dangerous. In terms of maybe taking a next step, I'll point out one team to you, and it's the Cincinnati Bengals.
Okay.
They have 2 first-round picks. They're in the later first round. That team is pretty good last year. They take those 2 first-round picks and potentially maybe trade up further into the first round and maybe take someone like Trent Richardson, or they stay where they are with those 2 picks and they fill defensive needs and maybe get some other pieces offensively, maybe take the running back from Boise State.
Yep.
that's a dangerous football team. The Cincinnati Bengals look poised, in my opinion, based on what they have in this draft, to potentially leapfrog the Pittsburgh Steelers and the Baltimore Ravens in the AFC North division. They look very tough.
What do the Steelers need to do to keep up? If that's happening,
get young. They need to get young quick. They need a new nose tackle.
Okay.
Casey Hampton is getting hurt a lot, and I think he's about, we talk about age again. You think he's 35 years old, and it's amazing that he's been able to play as long as he has. But their defense, as we saw Tim Tebow essentially shred them in the playoffs, their defense got old real quick. They need to upgrade their defensive line, and they desperately need upgrades along their offensive line and in their secondary. I think that's one of the reasons why Bruce Arians isn't their offensive coordinator anymore. They realize that they just do not have the offensive line to go out there and throw the football 40 times a game, so they're going to try and get back to running the football a little bit. And if they want to do that, Rashard Mendenhall might not be around anymore because of injury and fumble concerns.
Yep.
Maybe they look at running back or potentially interior offensive linemen.
Let's stay, I guess, at the bottom of the first round, but at the top of the NFL as it works. The Giants are a team whose absolute strength was getting to the quarterback defensively, and the Patriots were a team that really relied on the quarterback position to put up points and win games. Are there specific pieces that they are looking at that would make sense for them to stay at the top?
Well, with the Giants, they really can go any way with their final pick in the first round. There's lots of different avenues they can go in, so they're really in a position right there, especially with some of the moves they've made this year in free agency. I believe they picked up Martellus Bennett, so their tight end position is pretty well solidified. They made some decent moves to shore up their linebacking core. They made the trade for Keith Rivers for the Cincinnati Bengals. So that's a really good trade for them, and I think they're going to keep Chase Blackburn. So the Giants really can just go any which way, and I think that they're going to continue to be a dangerous team, especially if they make the playoffs. They seem to struggle in the regular season, but once they get into the playoffs, they just get red hot. With the Patriots, I think they have to just be targeting defense. Their defense last year was not good at all. In my humble opinion, they were lucky to be in the Super Bowl. And the fact that they were there is obviously a situation with matchups, playing an injured Denver team with Tim Tebow in the second round, and then Baltimore just imploding in the AFC Championship game. They need to target, and I think they will target, defensive players, in particular pass rushers and defensive tackles, or secondary, or really anything on defense, to be honest with you. At the Patriots, they have 2 first-round picks. And would not be surprised if they take a shot at Nick Perry, the kid out of USC. He just seems to fit what Bill Belichick likes in terms of outside linebackers. They have not had a pass-rushing outside linebacker, consistent rush linebacker, since Willie McGinnis retired. And it's been a big sore spot with the Patriots, and they've managed to get by it with the play of Tom Brady, but that's just not going to fly anymore. They got to get some defense to win another Super Bowl.
Where is value in this draft for you? Is there a specific position that you feel like is particularly deep that can be I'm coughing right now because I'm so excited about the NFL draft. That can be mined, second, third round, fourth round, when you get into the last couple of days. Are there specific players that you feel like when they're taken off the board that you're going to react with, ooh, that's a good pick? Not necessarily first rounders, but ooh, I really like him.
Well, again, we go back, not to repeat myself too much, but I'll go back to the wide receiver and the offensive line positions. I think that once you start seeing players like that go off the board, that's when I start to see like high value.
Right.
In terms of specific players, he's going to go early, but I think anyone who gets David DeCastro, that's high value. Most guards are not valued as high as he is coming into this draft. There are lots of people saying that, bar none, he's the best offensive lineman. Regardless of tackle, guard, center, doesn't matter. He's the best.
Right.
But he probably will not be the top offensive lineman taken. People normally, Matt Khalil probably will be taken either with probably with the third overall pick to Minnesota. So I think whoever gets to Castro is going to be getting a significant value. I think the other guy is going to be whoever takes Cordy Glenn, the kid out of Georgia. He can play probably guard and tackle. He'll probably go in late first round. He might fall to the second round, though I doubt it. I think whoever gets him, that's that's high value as well. You're getting some really good football players with those two guys. And, other guys that we mentioned earlier, I mean, I wouldn't be surprised. A guy like Stephen Hill, wide receiver out of Georgia Tech, he will probably be a second-round pick. And he's somebody that I think offers a lot of potential, and he'd be very good value there. The final guy that I'll mention is not offensive line or wide receiver, but it's cornerback, and it's Janoris Jenkins.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people think he might be the best cover corner in the draft.
Right.
And some people think that if he had not gotten in trouble last year and had come out in the draft, he might have been taken higher than Patrick Peterson.
Huh.
And Peterson's a heck of a player.
Yep.
So with Jenkins, he's probably going to fall to the second round. And whoever gets him, yeah, he's got baggage, but he's a heck of a football player in terms of talent. He can go out there and shut people down. Or he has the potential to shut people down at the NFL level. So it'll be interesting to see where he falls, but I think he'd be high value as well.
What do you think? This is a question more for Dan, I guess, the Pac-10 guy, a guy like Jonathan Martin.
Pac-12.
Pac-12.
Yeah.
Pac-12.
Yeah.
Stick with it.
Get it right. It's the Pac-12 now.
So Jonathan Martin, previously a top 10 guy, had
right.
kind of a fall-off year last year. Is he a first-round guy, or is he going to slip, and is that a lot of value there too?
I think there's value. I mean, I think Brad can speak to this more than I can, but because it is such a deep offensive line class, and those, I mean, it's the Stanford guys, DeCastro and Martin, and when you look at the success that they've had on the ground and in protecting Andrew Luck, it seems like it's pretty easy to protect Andrew Luck just because he makes decisions fairly quickly. But yeah, I think he's a value guy. I don't think the difference necessarily between he and Khalil is all that great, but I think there's eventually a drop-off between elite offensive lineman and very good long-time starter offensive lineman. What do you think, Brad?
I agree with you. And, guys that keep coming up with the left tackle stuff, because left tackle seems to be the one that everyone seems to kind of go nuts over, is Adams out of Ohio State.
Yep, Mike Adams.
Some people think that, or Riley Reif, or Jonathan Martin. Now, you've watched a lot of Pac-12 stuff. This is actually something I wanted to ask you with Jonathan Martin.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen a lot of different mocks and a lot of different scouting reports and talked to different people. I cannot get a consensus on Jonathan Martin. Some people tell me this kid is top 10. Some people tell me that it's laughable that anyone would take him on the first day, in the first round, that he might even be a third-round type prospect. But because he's a left tackle, he's going to go on the first day. I mean, did you watch a lot of Martin? Is he as good or as bad as people say he is?
I don't have strong opinions of offensive linemen. I just know when quarterbacks don't get sacked and when running backs have enormous holes to run through. And Stanford did a lot of complicated things in the run game with trapping, with pulling, and I don't know exactly how much he pulled, if at all, as a left tackle. But he, in a lot of ways, with that Jim Harbaugh and then David Shaw offense, the offensive line is counted on to do perhaps more than a lot of teams because they play so tightly with the tight end sets, the 2-3 tight end sets. So I feel like mentally he's in a terrific place. He's not playing out of a 2-point stance like some of these spread offensive linemen and offensive tackles. So he does have the experience in a decidedly NFL system. But I think with him, because he's so large, he's not Ogden big, but there are physical concerns.
Yeah, it's real big.
He's real big. And Ogden is enormously big. Yeah.
Big.
So it's in talking to offensive line coaches, the rare times that I get to, there's such a stress on flexibility, which I think is big with Matt Khalil, and I think less so with Jonathan Martin. I think that's the difference when you're getting top of the top to just elite. So that seems to be the difference. But again, I'm not an expert, but that's what I've heard thus far.
Size and strength and things like that are what people often talk about. And
right.
Martin and Khalil are, comparable in terms of height and, and weight and stuff like that. Like they do at the combine, like they evaluate these guys like they're like a piece of sirloin or something like that, with the measuring tape and seeing how they can jump and stuff like that. Whereas a guy like Mike Adams, this guy's 6'7", 230 pounds.
330 pounds, yeah.
Sorry, 330 pounds. I mean, that is a big boy there from Ohio State. And I think people just kind of look at that and they kind of salivate over it.
Right.
But they don't quite know how athletic he is.
Sure. And here's a question, I guess it's more in general when you look at the entire league. Is there a specific team, because of the sheer number of picks, and I know you mentioned Cincinnati with their 2 picks later on in the first round, but when you look at the draft as a whole, is there a team that has a great number of picks, even weighted towards the beginning of the draft, that you think could look decidedly different come the fall because they are able to repopulate their personnel in ways that other teams cannot?
Well, the Indianapolis Colts actually have a lot of draft picks.
Okay.
And I think in that regard, they're going to certainly repopulate their roster in a different way. It's going to be a totally different team than what people are seeing. So in that regard, and I'm obviously extremely biased in this,
Sure.
so that's why I try not to talk about it too much, because I actually am kind of excited about it. I think I'm very interested to see what this new team is going to be, and I don't think it's going to be as bad as a lot of people say that it will be.
Right.
Cleveland is the team that I think, they're going to be the one that I think that will change the most, depending on who they pick. They have 2 first-round picks, the 4th overall and the 22nd overall.
Mm-hmm.
They have a lot of leverage in terms of what they can do with those picks and the types of players they can get at those picks. If they decide to get a guy like Ryan Tannehill at number 4, or if they trade down from number 4 so they could potentially get Tannehill or somebody else, they could really reshape their roster. I like their coaching staff there. I think that if Cleveland just somehow manages to get a quarterback there and then fill in some other pieces, maybe at the wide receiver position, you're going to get a really good one at number 22, which Cleveland drafts at. Maybe Floyd out of Notre Dame is still there.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe. I doubt it.
Right.
But it's possible. If he is, you're getting a great wide receiver there. I personally think Floyd is higher than Blackman, but that's just me. I think Cleveland is the team because of all the picks they have and where they have them. They could really change their roster and be much more of a threat in that division. That AFC North division just looks scary. If you're a team in the AFC North or a fan of a team in the AFC North,
Yep.
it is just a scary division in terms of talent within the team.
And when you look at RG3, we're just assuming to the Redskins, and they do spend money on the receiver position in free agency, how do you see their ideal draft? Is it defense? I mean, they found, I think, a lot of people consider a gem in Ryan. God, what is his name? The Ryan Kerrigan, from Purdue.
Kerrigan, yeah.
Yeah, I think they found a gem in him long term. It seems, and they spent money on the receiver position. Is it repopulate? I like that word, repopulating today. Is it sort of surrounding him with offensive talent? Is it supporting field position situations with going for defense? What is the Redskins' direction du jour?
I think with the Redskins, they gave up so many picks to get Griffin.
Yeah.
With where they go, what they have later in the draft, I think they're just going to take whoever's the best available. They've used free agency, really, to try and surround Griffin with what we assume will be Griffin.
Right.
Let's just not even say that. It's going to be Griffin.
Right.
They got Pierre Garçon there to be a wide receiver with them. So they've spent draft picks on offensive linemen in recent years. Williams, I think Trent Williams was taken by them 2 years ago. So with the Redskins, I think once they finally get to their draft pick that is not the 2nd overall, they're probably just going to take whatever is best available. And if I were them, you take Robert Griffin III, I think you go offense. You want to surround him with as many weapons as possible. And their defense was pretty good last year.
Yeah.
So I think that you go offense if you're the Redskins.
With Garçon, is that kind of a boom or bust, seeing him in a new situation after not having, so much face time for a lot of people? I'm curious to see.
I think Pierre Garçon, who was a very nice guy, I've spoken with him a few times, I think he pretty much defines the term boom or bust.
Uh-huh.
A very streaky wide receiver. If he were a basketball player, we'd call him a streaky shooter.
Mm-hmm.
He's one of these guys that one game he'll go out there, and like in the playoffs a few years ago, and just go nuts. He'll catch 6 balls for 150 yards and 2 touchdowns and set a playoff record. And then the next game he'll drop 3 critical passes and kind of be the GOAT a little bit. So I think with Pierre, I think it'll be a boom or bust signing for the Redskins. I think they overpaid to get him. But if you're going to take Robert Griffin III, number 2 overall, you got to get him guys that can get down the field. Griffin's got a gun for an arm, and Pierre can certainly do that.
A team I'm interested in when we talk about final pieces, just because I'm somewhat of a fan, but not really. I just like the fact when teams jump up from not being a playoff team to an absolute just monster, is San Francisco. And some mocks, they have them with Coby Fleener, which is weird to me because if there's any position the 49ers don't need to get better at, it's tight end. But if they are going to be looking at those weird 2 tight end sets that we know Jim Harbaugh likes running, that makes sense. What is their final piece? Obviously, it's a Super Bowl situation with San Francisco. What do they need to get past the Packers, the Saints, the Giants? What do they need to add to become that next step team?
They might already be there with the way that the Saints have, kind of fallen off the face of the earth with the Bounty Gate thing. Every 49er fan tells me they need to get a guard.
Okay.
That if they just get a guard, the 49ers will be great. And, they'll be instant Super Bowl champions. I kind of, I don't know how I feel about that. I do think they need a guard in order to improve their offensive line. If Kobe Fleener is there at number 30, well, I'm hearing a lot of people thinking that Fleener might be gone by then. If he's still there at 30, I would think that San Francisco should take him. If they don't, then I think maybe one of the hang-ups as well is is his success at Stanford under Harbaugh going to transfer to the 49ers under Harbaugh? There'll be questions about that. I don't know. Fleener, his pro day, he opened a lot of eyes with how fast he ran on a windy day.
Right.
He's a big guy. He can catch pretty much anything thrown near him. I think if you're San Francisco at 30 and Fleener's still there, you take him, because if you don't, I think somebody else will take him. Maybe not the Patriots or the Giants after that, but I would think that the Indianapolis Colts would take him at 34 without question. We'd have Luck and Fleener reunited, but in Indianapolis.
So in general, as we sort of conclude, as we wrap down, I'm staring at my producer, Isaac, drinking beer as we're recording this. Good job, Isaac Cohen.
My goodness.
Good
That's
job.
One for me.
Yes, we will. In general, of anything we haven't mentioned, what are some storylines that you're going to be paying particularly close attention to, whether it's in the first round, whether it's teams trading picks for later round picks? Are there teams, players, storylines? What are you looking forward to next week? Or I guess anytime anybody's listening to this, what are you looking forward to as the draft unravels?
Number one, I'm looking forward to hanging out with you at the draft.
Hell yes.
That's priority number one right there. Storylines, trades, you mentioned that. That's number one. I think it's the trades within the top 10 that I'm really, really, really excited about and interested in. Other types of storylines, just in general, I'm really interested to see what Denver does. I mean, Denver's a totally different team now with Peyton Manning. Do they try and fix their defense? Do they stay at number 25, or do they try and move up and get more weapons for Peyton? And finally, I'm always fascinated by what Super Bowl teams do in the draft in order to get back to the Super Bowl. We talked about the Patriots and Giants. You're drafting at the bottom end of the first round, especially for the Giants. What do they do and where do they go to get back to a Super Bowl and either repeat or avenge their loss for last season? Those are the three things that I always look for in the draft. And I guess the fourth would be who the Colts are going to take.
Yep.
I mean, I'm excited about that too. I'm just as excited about that now as I've ever been for any draft.
Exciting stuff. Yeah. One thing Dan and I have talked about, just briefly, and then we'll let you go here. We've talked about mock drafts. Everybody has an opinion. I was poking around at walterfootball.com, has 488 mock drafts that they have accumulated from across the internet. Everything from Robert Griffin slipping to 4, Washington not taking anyone at 2, just very random, off-the-wall celebrity drafts. Everyone has an opinion.
They just forfeit the pick.
Just forfeiting the pick.
Minnesota.
We ran out of time.
Yeah, it reminds me of when ESPN used to do a fantasy football draft, and Susie Colbert picked Brett Favre. She picked the defense for the intangibles after Brett Favre, I think, went number 2 in the draft, and they had to explain. So that said, mock drafts. I'm sure you've been poring over them. Dan has been poring over them. I've been, studying and seeing where my guys are going to go and what I really care about. Do they matter? Are they accurate? Are they, is there a follow-along guide for Thursday night, or is it just something that's fun to do for a month leading up to the draft?
Are they accurate? Heck no. Mm-hmm. No way. No way are they accurate. Are they good to have? They provide. I always view mock drafts as they provide a framework for how people are viewing this draft going in. Teams do mock drafts internally. They have their draft boards, and fans are just mimicking that. And I love them. I love mock drafts. I always have, because they're fun. They give you an idea of what fans are thinking about with their team. If you make a selection for a team and fans just lose their minds over that selection, or they love that selection, it gives you an idea of kind of what they're hoping for out of the draft. And it informs you in a lot of ways as to what, the people who pay to watch this product are hoping for out of it. So I think there's a lot of benefit to the mock draft. and to doing mock drafts. But if you're going to mock drafts thinking they're going to be accurate in any way, shape, or form, it's wrong. I mean, there's always a couple of teams over the years. It was seemingly always the Oakland Raiders who come in the top 10 and just make a selection, and you're just like, what?
Oh.
And they make that selection, and it just messes up the whole rest of the first round. And, when that happens, it happened last year when those quarterbacks were taken early, when Locker and Ponder went off the board early. A lot of really high-quality players fell in the first round. And when Locker and Ponder went that early, literally everyone in the draft room went, what? I mean, all the writers there just kind of looked around and shrugged their shoulders and started to type, and that's just what happens with every draft. So I love mocks. I think they're great, but they are by no means accurate.
Well, his name is Brad Wells, of course. Brad, thank you very much for being so generous with your time. So you're going to be here. You're going to be at SB Nation for the draft.
Yes, I will be there for the draft, and I will actually be at the draft.
That's incredible.
And then I will be at SB Nation for the draft because you guys seem to like me being up on the YouTube channel, so I'll be talking about who the teams picked, and I will be relying heavily on your expertise on certain players because I don't know all of them.
I would say we like you, but America loves you. I think that's how it breaks down. Brad, thank you very much for your time. I'm looking forward to seeing you soon.
Thank you to you both. Take care.
Thanks, Brad.
There you have it. Brad Wells.
Brad Wells.
He's really bright, and I don't think he said or
no
the whole time.
No.
And I barely have a sort of a concept of the English language.
All the time, yeah.
We're terrible. We're 15-year-old girls on the inside.
Basically. I mean, we talked about haircuts today.
Brad, yeah, we
talked
did.
about Maria Sharapova's
Blackheads.
Maria
Sharapova's fake.
Check your pores.
We are doing we're doing a terrific job.
Yeah.
People are going, once again, we started the show with people are going to remember this as a seminal moment of broadcasting. And the word seminal makes me giggle a little bit on the inside. But that is a wrap for the first episode of the SB Nation podcast. Maybe at some point we'll have a better name for that. They're really big on names here.
Yeah.
They're really big on names not being boring. Yeah. But I feel like the SB Nation podcast, it's who we are, it's what we do, whatever. Again, my name is Dan Rubenstein. That is Josh Dodd. We are both residents of the borough of Brooklyn. We will see you soon. Thank you for listening and or watching. Bye-bye.